Black Box Production.
Y'all know, I know that. Y'all know, I know, y'all know, I saw your boy T.I. issue on the rant with his partner K-Dub. It was crazy, like, first of all, I like to begin this segment by iterating that I am nothing like these rap niggas on my mama. I find it hilarious. First of all, his homie, they on like a FaceTime type live thing. And they it looked like live, the way the screen is split, not FaceTime. But they on the live. And from what I could make out, the boy K-Dub is clowning Tony Yayo. He on Tony Yayo bumper. Now this cat is a comedian. So from what I could make out, he rolled with Cliffy Tiffy, T.I. issue, tipster. He rolled with the tipster. So him and the tipster is on the thing, and he telling the tipster, I guess, I don't know. It seemed like Curtisha must be upset with tipster about not attending a function, because when it came on, tipster is like asking questions of K-Dub, attempting to clarify or substantiate a good reason for his absence at the function. He like, hey, where was you yesterday? Oh, well, like I was in Brooklyn. What I was doing? He was like, what I told you. I got the jet gassed up. I'm on my way. What you told me? He said, you told me not to come. Why you told me not to come? New York locked down. I don't think it's going to be no function. So supposedly, Curtisha was having a function. He would appreciate it. It seemingly to me, I could be wrong. Seemingly, he would have appreciated the tipster being there. The tipster didn't show up, so I can imagine from the tipster's response that Curtisha must have made some type of public mention of a lack of appreciation for the tipster's absence. So, tipster on the thing, and his boy K-Dub, he tell him how, first of all, I don't know. To me, this sounds like something similar of criminal activity, and it remind me somewhat of the incident that got tipster in all that trouble in Ohio at a venue in New York. And K-Dub say Tony Yayo and some goons surrounded him and basically pressed him and mentioned gunplay and all that, right? On my mama, I'm thinking to myself, like, if somebody press you and get at you about gunplay, that's like illegal. Now the tipster and his partner the very next day. Now this is obviously something he done already talked to Tip about. They get on the live and immediately tell the whole world that Tony Yayo, 4-5 goons, which I'm pretty sure was probably on camera. The camera don't know what the conversation is in the venue, but the boy K-Dub done let the hip-hop police and the whole world know that Tony Yayo and some goons pressed him and spoke about gunplay. Mr. G Code, who not once mentioned the G Code, started off in this conversation that seemingly lasted about 30, 45 minutes. Somebody put it in my DM multiple times, a lot of y'all. So I finally listened to it. I listened to the whole thing. And the boy Tip started off dropping a few intentional cousins. I don't know where them came from. I guess he was trying to talk like us. I don't know, but he was talking about Curtisha. He like cuz this and cuz that, kept referring to him as cuz. But out of 45 minutes to an hour, I don't know how long it was, 30 minutes, 25 minutes, it was a long thing. He said cuz about 10 times in the first 2-3 minutes, and then he didn't say cuz no more. He got real angry. Cuz didn't come out no more. I don't know what cuz mean to him, but he was calling him cuz. It sounded so intentional and out of place. It was like he attempted to turn off all the eloquence that he has went so hard to prove to us that he possesses. But not only did K-Dub tell the hip-hop police, the whole world, the feds, everybody, they can have a pair of eyes and ears to view a YouTube video that he was basically assaulted and his life was threatened in a venue, named the person who did it, and then start talking about he want to fight him in a ring. In the midst of trying to, before he went on the tough rant, the tipster also, no, at the end, he included that him and Curtisha gonna be sitting on the side like Frank Lucas in some big old jackets while the other two dudes fight. But before he got to that, he went on this whole rant about how he ain't scared. I've been taught all my life, anybody hollering, I ain't scared, especially 1,000 times in a row, is scared of something. Then the tipster, the boy K-Dub kind of played him. Tipster brought up the snitching out of nowhere. First he threatened 50. He like, it's so corny because he keep talking this tough stuff. He could take it anywhere. Him and everybody who love him against anybody and anybody who loved him. And he addressed Curtisha in such a on camera now in such a warrior way. But then he keep trying to bring it back to records. It's so confusing, such a mixed message, so evil, so devilish. But on top of that, the boy K-Dub, the boy out of nowhere is conscious. The boy tipster conscious is bothering, so he bring up the snitchuation. And when he bring up the snitchuation, he talking about who have I told on? Where have I ever offered any information to put anybody in jail? And I just can't help. But my mind is such a visual organ. I can't help but see the 45 minutes of testimony. This is my thing, tipster. You did all that ranting, talking tough about you ain't no snitch, you ain't no rat, you got your paperwork. Your boy K-Dub said paperwork party. That's a word that you popularized. You made that word phrase famous. When that boy said paperwork party, you did not chime in on that. You left that alone. You act like you didn't even hear that. I wonder why you are so afraid or so reluctant or refusing to upload the 45 minutes of testimony that I saw multiple times, where you gave plenty information to corroborate with the story that the prosecution was presenting in a murder trial in the case where your best friend Phil was murdered after you had the problem in the venue about the VIP being too crowded. You told all this on the stand. The VIP was too crowded, you was complaining. The boys was throwing money in there. You didn't like it, you didn't know who they was. Then you said y'all left the venue, went down the street. Your van got sprayed. This is what you said on the stand, tipster. This is the information. Remember you said, when have you gave any information? This is all the information that you provided on the stand on behalf of the prosecution in a murder trial where the suspect, the defendant, received a very, very lengthy sentence. The prosecution was successful in obtaining their conviction, partly in due to the testimony that you provided. 45 minutes of information, corroborating testimony, while you're trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes, while you're taking advantage of this YouTube generation and population that has no idea exactly how profoundly you ratted, and then how successful you were in eradicating the evidence from the whole entire internet. And then you have the audacity to get on a camera This what happened when you get to being takers and all that and get behind that camera and be whoever you want to. You get on that live camera and get to talking tough, talking about you the king, and you never ratted. Then you went to justify that commercial. You no longer bring up the G code. When you first went on your campaign and crusade of trying to justify, the G code was on the tip of your tongue. And now when you go to justify that weak tip commercial, the G code never come out your mouth. On my mama. I wonder what happened to the G code. So please, in the light of the G code, justify that weak tip commercial. You know what I find ironic as well? This blows my mind. How somebody who did a weed tip commercial say they live by the G code. In the midst of his justification, this is what he said. They was gonna give me 20 years. If you think I ain't gonna do a commercial, you crazy. This is why he don't mention the G code, because the G code says in the face of no matter how much time they gonna give you, you don't do anything that violates your principles and what you stand for. That's what that G code that he attempted to quote, and he started out by saying it clearly states that he no longer references. That's why he no longer references, because anytime he holds up that G code, it makes obvious being a star witness on behalf of the prosecution in a murder trial where you provide 45 minutes of detailed testimony aiding in obtaining a conviction on behalf of the DA and the state in a murder trial that you were a witness to. See, what people try to like confuse the cornballs on is if you don't point out and say that was him, you are not a rat. There is so much more participation that you can provide in a criminal prosecution other than pointing and saying you are the one. Let me tell you something. Somehow, and it doesn't matter how, somehow the prosecution was aware of whom they believed to be present and responsible for the events that took place that night. We know this because they were already in trial. When it comes to going forward in trial, we've seen it not only in shows, but those of us from the other side, you know it in real life. The prosecution, the state is not going to go forward with just this amount of evidence, or just because they have a hunch, or just because they know and don't have the evidence to actually support what they are attempting to prove in a proceeding. Now, there is a word in the legal system that is heard over and over again, and it's called corroborating testimony or corroborating evidence. Not collaborating, but corroborating. And when the word corroborating means this piece makes this piece make more sense. And together they paint a picture that helps who's ever trying to paint the picture make the picture more clear to the person that is viewing the picture. So these pieces of evidence or these pieces of testimony corroborate one another. So if you already have an individual in court, and this is the person, you already have an amount of evidence establishing on your behalf that this is the person responsible or guilty of these activities. Now you need and desire corroborating evidence and testimony to go along with the other evidence or testimony that you already have saying, hey, this is the guy that did it. Now, do you know what corroborating testimony is? Coming on the stand saying, I'm not sure if that's the guy, but on the night, such and such an event, this is what happened to me. And then say every single thing that this individual is in court being charged with doing. That is called providing corroborating evidence on behalf of the prosecution in a murder trial. And it is so evident of what it is, no matter how upset the tipster gets, and no matter how many curse words he uses and how many cyber threats he makes into the vague public, no matter how many nameless people he calls the B word on his live. When you provide corroborating testimony in a murder trial on the stand for 45 minutes, you are a rat. And then just notice how he was asked a series of questions for almost an hour by the DA, the person that is trying to find the suspect guilty. Not once did the DA have to correct him. Not once did the DA object to anything he said. The DA was 100% pleased with all of the information he provided. The DA, this is what y'all don't know, had been seeking to take this case to trial for 2 years. 2 years he was trying to take this case to trial and refused to because there was not enough corroborating testimony, in his opinion, to achieve a conviction. How ironic. Tipster gets caught up trying to go by the G code, purchasing weapons on federal parole. Not only does he receive what they considered and described as an experimental sentence, to where he only did like a year. He's then involved in filming We Tip commercials. And all of a sudden, he's willing, present, and able to go to court on behalf of the prosecution who was not able to go forward in that case for all that time, is now ready because the tipster is ready. Case wasn't good enough until Tip was ready. Then they went to trial, and they got their conviction. And in the midst of all that, Tip proved to us he knew what was available to him, because they asked him all these questions about the night in question that had to do with the crime. And he answered every question, providing all the details of the events that took place that night on behalf of the prosecution. This is exactly what the DA desired of him. This is what you have to understand, you all. The defense would have wished he didn't show up and never agreed to participate. That would have been on their behalf. That would have been not being a rat. That would have been not telling, not having anything to say, sticking to the G code, handling it on the street like you started to do. But then, finally, after all that, toward the end of the proceedings, they asked the tipster about a female companion that he had with him that evening. And now, finally, not the G code, but I guess the marriage code, the tiny code, whatever code you call that, kicked in. And this dude said, I plead the fifth. Can you believe that? I'll be damned. After providing all the detailed testimony that aided in ruining the dude's life that he got into the funk with, he finally decided to do something reminiscent of the G code and plead the fifth when asked about the female that was with him. Oh, my mama. Everybody co-signing him like Meek Mill said. You hang with a rat, you a rat too. I ain't tripping. I know I'm a one-man gang. Been like that. I ain't nothing like these rap niggas.
SPR exclusive.
This is J.P. Banks Music.
Black Box Productions.
When you're sticking to the script, it's a lonely road. So they left the whole tank, the big homie told. He know the way this testimony hold. On that low 4, they gon' politic on him cold.
Hey, good net hustle. Big shout out to my nigga SPI, Spotter Low. You know I'm in the black box, had to come through, tap in, show love one time. Yeah, y'all make sure y'all subscribe. Stay tuned, all that.